Hello, and welcome to RAL, a Steel Division War Room. The War Room is a podcast about RAL Steel Division. We did this for Wargame before, but we're going to be taking this to new heights with this new World War II game. And today's topic is really just a general discussion over the current beta status of Steel Division. When this video is being recorded right now, we have 8 divisions, 4 on Axis, 4 on Allies, and 5 maps, new divisions being the French and the 21st Panzer Division. And today I am joined by the Reddit Dictatorial mod team, who are otherwise known as...
I'm Valh. Dictator is a very strong word. I prefer to think of it as a community guider.
Sure.
Hi everyone, I'm Mbetts.
And Razzmann, you can call me Führer if you want.
Sure, buddy.
Only in the bedroom.
You can be my Fusilier Führer anytime.
Ooh.
Yeah, get your rocket launcher out. Is it the one with a rocket launcher? I don't know. But,
yeah, I think, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But anyway, we want to be discussing pretty much just the general mechanics of Steel Division. We won't be going too depth into any one topic, or we'd be here for 3 hours. Because that would be a fun 3 hours of Faust. So essentially, let's get this started. So first up, we're going to be talking about the mechanics, the general new mechanics that have been added in Steel Division over the Wargame series. And I think the major one, the big change, is the map control and how the map control works now. Instead of having sectors that you have to capture, you now have to capture the entire bloody map, every square meter of it. So, what do you guys think of the new change?
Honestly, I quite like it, although me and Bets played a game just before we came and recorded this, and something that I kind of realised was that with Wargame, even up until the end of the game, there's a way that you can win.
With,
you know, even if you've lost, yeah, you could kill everyone's CVs, whereas with this game, we found what happened was... we had a super low. So give me a second. Yeah, we had basically no conquest points. They were going to win, and they were basically it was going to time out to 40 minutes, but there was no way that we could actually come back. So it was a bit weird because there's no point playing the game after that point really. But in general, I really like it. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with Val on this. I do agree with that, but I also do like the mechanic in general. One of the gripes that I had with Wargame, and especially in like 1v1s and even higher, if you were going to go to a sector, there was a certain way you were going to attack that sector. There was a certain sort of route you were going to go through, and you take pretty much the same stuff every time. And while it's a little bit less so in Steel Division, because people still tend to fight around the towns and the sort of the hard points of the map, you can generally push anywhere, and an open field is worth as much as a town in terms of land gained, and obviously points gained in that regard.
Yeah, well, I don't think it will be too much different from Wargame, where you see a certain amount of strategies for each map being viable. I just think that unlike the main advantage, in my opinion, but I actually just realized that fairly late into playing Steel Division, I think, is that a lot of the dead areas we have in Wargame, where there are just some open fields that there's just no worth in sending units there, actually become quite important. But I don't think that the general theme of certain strategies being very common on certain maps, or just setting X amount of points from your starting force to that area, I don't think that will be too much different from Wargame.
I find it with the map control, it does a very good job emphasizing the most important part of every single RTS game, which is map control. And with like Company of Heroes, for example, you're capping sectors, and by capping those sectors, you get extra resources, so you get a bigger army. Here, because how the point system works and how you get your resources, it doesn't tie in at all with the map control. So just having the entire map just be capturable and dealing with your score instead of more of your resources works really well, I say, compared to fighting over the static sectors of Wargame.
Yeah, but I heard, well, there are like 2 parts of people. Some people just complain that the front line indirectly reveals where the enemy units are.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
But I think in most cases it doesn't matter that much, since there are just some positions, some buildings where you just generally expect units to be into. But I can see where they're coming from, because if there is no unit on a certain part of the front line, then even if your unit is standing still and you kill the enemy unit that originally was there, then the front line will slowly but surely expand that way. And then you know, okay, there's just literally nothing left.
Yeah,
So
I'd agree with that.
Yeah, it works fairly well, but it's not quite perfect.
Yeah, it does have its issues. I would say one thing that is kind of annoying about it is it's probably to do with like the line drawing algorithm or whatever, but like you mentioned, you said where a little bit of the map sort of creeps forward and there's nothing there. Well, sometimes that sort of bit that goes and penetrates into the front line just goes on for miles. It's like this massive salient, and there's no units from either side in there. It's just kind of just pushed itself out. And so one team might have a really big land advantage until someone sends an infantry or whatever to just pull that back into line.
Yeah, because it's a real good point, because you can't have the whole map control mechanic how it is right now without having showing you, okay, there's nothing all the way up till this forest line. But on the other part, you don't know what's in that forest. You don't know the exact location. It could be maybe just a recon dude or a heavily armored anti-tank, anti-aircraft force ready to kick your shit in.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, obviously recon is exempt to this though, so that does make things a bit interesting. Especially if you have the is it the Panzerabwehr and the Ranger Marauders with the anti-tank weapons.
Yeah.
They can really wreak havoc behind enemy lines.
Yeah, although it really didn't happen to me very often on either the receiving side or the operating side, that a unit sneaking behind enemy lines actually did a lot of work. Especially when compared to Wargame, the infantry anti-tank ranges comparatively are just so much lower.
Yeah. Also, because you're fighting over the entire map instead of like Wargame where you just fight over the middle, it's very hard to sneak infantry units behind enemy lines, and also no helicopters to do that anymore.
No tactical outplays.
No tats. It's the worst thing. I really wish I had it back somehow. Just bring some helicopters from the future, some Nazi prototypes. Yeah, we go.
Just exchange the skin of the French M8s and M10s with helicopters, and it's basically the same.
Yeah. So, also, as quite a few quality of life improvements, we have to say, and I just want to briefly talk about the whole line of sight tool, the movement lines, giving orders before units. What do you guys take on that?
I never knew that I needed these things until I had them. Like when I came into this game, and we've got the closed beta we can't talk about, but similar feelings, shall we say? And we got into this open beta, the Alexis thing, and just sitting there, just being able to move your stuff before and give it orders. Like I could go and make a cup of tea or something while I'm waiting for my units to get to the front line. It's amazing. I wish Wargame had that.
Agree. Whenever I go back to play Wargame now, I'm always placed on my units and try and click them to move them, like give them orders, and then it hits me after about a minute. It's definitely something that I never knew that I wanted so much.
I mean, the line of sight tool was asked for in Wargame a lot, but the thing I like the most is that when you hold shift, you see exactly what your unit is doing, what it will be doing. That's like one of the most useful tools. I think the line of sight tool, I mean, it is certainly useful and certainly nice. I don't think it is for me that big of a deal as the unit the shift command where you see what your unit is doing. That is so nice.
And it's also good for stopping units from getting into ambushes if you'll see, oh no, he's going to go down that road and get destroyed by that AT gun. But I find the LRS thing to be, I love just holding down the C button and seeing what reared angles I can get. I remember I was playing run match as Luftlander and I had a pack gun. And there's this Churchill I really needed dead. And there's just this tiniest gap through these two buildings. I managed to trick shot the Churchill and get the kill. And I wouldn't be able to do that in Wargame unless I had an LRS tool. They could just package like the new quality of life features, remaster Wargame for $40, and I think people would buy it.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I totally would do that too, because it's like you said, they're so bloody useful. It's lovely.
Those are, well, I think I'm probably gonna wait for later to say that, I guess.
And also, new mechanics, Rise. Infantry combat's been completely revamped. Instead of fighting over sectors with large squads of infantry, they're now all singular squads, more spread out. It's a coverment system, so your infantry aren't always uncovered when they're out in the open. Just the whole town fight and how infantry interact is such a huge change from Wargame. Thoughts?
I do like the infantry can't teleport anymore.
Well, I think that's just mostly since like buildings are usually now count as their own, not blocks or some bullshit.
Yeah.
Well, not just that, but I've noticed as well that the units seem to be a smaller entity on the map. Does that make sense? So in Wargame, it felt like your units could cross ground much faster because they seem to be a bigger entity, and now, I mean, I don't know whether it's.
I mean, it's also speed.
Well, even then, the speed is still not that much lower than Wargame. I mean, it's low
compared to like
crazy,
map
though.
size as well, which is smaller.
Yeah.
And I think this also comes to play since vehicle off-road speed is also much lower than in Wargame.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, tons slower, yeah.
15 kilometers per hour off-road for my King Tiger? Yes, please.
Yeah.
I'll see you in 2 hours.
Like mechanical-wise, it's like, I mean, if you want to get really deep, it's not that much different in Wargame. If you like actually look at the mechanics, how they work, but obviously since they are not standardized anymore, like one primary weapon, one anti-tank weapon, and one MG, they offer obviously a lot more diversity.
Yeah.
And
I love
they're
that
also
change.
a lot more expensive than in Wargame.
Yeah, significantly. Apart from the Ersatztruppen, where you can get 10 million of them.
Yeah.
Or 24.
But
it's like Jaeger.
Yeah, it's just like Jaeger,
back
10
when
points.
They were good.
I mean, just the price-wise, but not like efficiency-wise.
Oh yeah, I'd say they're more like Yokude from Wargame, or whatever the reserve squad is called.
Yeah, the Chinese.
Or the 10-point Scandi reserves.
North Korean.
They're basically cheap recon is what they are now.
Yeah.
But I do think that one thing that I find really cool is that they've added the ability for infantry to have handheld smoke grenades, which is really cool. You can do some really cool things with them. At the moment, I think it's only the Stoss Troop and a few of the command squads, but still
mostly
very
command
cool.
squads, I think. So far, at least.
There is one thing I'd like to talk about with infantry, and I was again chatting to Mbetts just before this about it, and it's I feel like one problem that anti-tank infantry has, because basically I think they get spotted too easily. It feels like I'll be in a forest and there won't be a recon squad on the other side of it, and instead there'll be like 2 tanks off from the forest. And a lot of the time, the tanks will spot the infantry without a recon squad present and then pin it down before it can even fire. And I feel like the bazooka or the handheld AT should have a faster acquisition time, maybe, because it feels
definitely.
like
Happened to me once as well.
It feels like when they're firing it, it's like if you have a tank, right, it has a wind-up time. Sometimes, like if it's not looking towards it, it has to turn the turret, right? And that's signified by this little black circle inside, or like the grey circle, where it's not actually spinning round. The same thing happens with infantry. I think if your infantry isn't going the right way, they treat it the same way as like a tank turret, it feels. And your infantry can't fire 360 like that.
It happened to me once that I had infantry behind the big tree lines where tanks can't cross, and I knew that directly behind that there was I think a Sherman and 1 or 2 half tracks, and I had a Pentagram squad attack moving upward it, and it wasn't even able to get 1 shot off because it got instantly stunned and then surrendered to the units. And this is kind of ridiculous.
And also, like, when you're just in a tree line and that tank is only 10 meters away, so you just need to move that 10 meters. You move out, and then, like you said, bang, yeah, goes the infantry squad. You just get completely rickety wrecked by machine gun and HE fire. Where you should have, like, just a few precious seconds of not being spotted all the time, be able to just get a shot off at least before getting annihilated.
Yeah, I think one of the issues with this that's pronounced itself with the Allies is that, when you're playing Germans against the Allies, is that the 50 cals that the Allies get are ludicrously good. Like, you might notice, if you run an infantry squad out and there's like a tank shooting at it, for example, let's say like a Stuart or whatever, because they have, which one is it? Is it the
Stuart has
Sherman? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Sherman, right? So the two Browning M19 and 19s of 30 cal seem to acquire first, and then they might, stun it a little bit. Then once the 50 cal gets on target, it just wipes the squad so quickly. And I believe that there's a guy who told me that he and a friend of his had gone into the game files and found out that apparently the relative power of the 50 cal was higher than like the German 20 mil and 37 mils, which is interesting. So I'd like to check that out for myself, which I haven't done yet, but
My
still I would.
anti-material rifle.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, I'd like to clarify that, but as far as I'm aware, that's the case. So.
Yeah, no way that can be intentional. That seems like a bug because on one hand, like machine guns in this game are much more useful compared to Wargame. Like you said, a 50 cal in Wargame's useless essentially. It's just.
I mean, even if you go up to something like the KPVT, it's still pretty useless.
Yeah, it's still pretty damn useless. Only when you get to like the autocannon levels when those infantry support weapons become good. Well, here, just one machine gun on top of a half track, just one crappy 30 cal machine gun is
but I mean,
make it or break compared to, like a proper autocannon in an infantry.
Yeah, but I mean, you also pay for that. It's not like the transports are as cheap as they are in Wargame, where it costs 5 points. I mean, you pay for a half track 20 points here, and I mean, it is as strong as you would expect from that. Yeah. Most of the time, I would say.
Well, again, I would say the issue isn't with most half tracks; it's just the 50 cal ones, in my opinion, because all of the other ones I think are fairly priced.
Yeah, but I mean, they are still comparatively a lot stronger than they are in Wargame, obviously.
Yeah, I do think a lot of that has to come down to the suppression and surrender mechanic as well. Like, unlike in Wargame, you can't like march your infantry across a field under fire because they'll get pinned down. Whereas in like Wargame, your infantry will keep going even if they're being slaughtered by the hundreds.
Yeah, when you're moving, you get pinned down so easily.
I think it's more realistic, but I'm still not sure whether or not it's better for gameplay. I'm going to reserve my judgment on that until I play a bit more, I think.
Yeah, I think infantry just has less of a meat shield role than in Wargame. A lot less. With the exception of Ersatztruppen, for example, of course.
I find with the whole infantry, they've been nerfed and they've also been buffed at the same time. Because infantry are still very important units that you need to go through towns and clear forests and whatnot. But they have less presence compared to infantry in Wargame, ATGMs and AA pieces. So they're really good close range, but once you get to, knocking out tanks or, you can't shoot down airplanes anymore, manpads, because they don't exist, they've really been nerfed in that regard.
I actually feel like that's not quite the case. I mean, I will agree with the stuff with the ATGMs. Infantry does not have anywhere near the zone of control it used to do. But at the same time, when you look at the maps, the way the fact that tanks can't go through heavy tree cover, or basically any vehicle really can't go through the heavy bocage, your infantry can really block off those little choke points. Yeah, they might only have like 200 meter range on their bazookas or whatever, but that 200 meters is enough if you can cover those small choke points. Which is why, I mean, one thing I've seen a lot of people do and sort of pay the price for it is they'll try and go past without clearing out the tree line first. And I think that just as a general rule, you should always lead with a recon squad and some half tracks or something to clear out a tree line that you're going to go past, basically.
So you don't get side-shotted by a sneaky Panzer Grenadier?
Well, not even that, like AT guns as well. Like, you can turn off the weapons on the AT guns and have them as the return fire mechanic, which is another thing that I really like. Like, if you keep an AT gun and you turn the weapons off on it, a tank can get really close before you fire, so you can make it like an 11 AP gun kill a much higher armor target because it gets very close, basically.
I also find it interesting how infantry aren't just relegated to towns anymore. They're very useful inside a forest and heck, in some regards, open ground engagements.
They can be. I think really you still do pay the price against half tracks. That's the big thing.
I think they're actually more limited in Wargame. In Wargame, you still saw them in forests, well, they were mandatory in forests and in towns, obviously, but also very useful or had a role in the open. Whereas in the open, infantry here is like, unless you're like operating on the flank where the enemy barely has anything, they're like mostly useless.
I kind of feel like the stealth value on infantry is like lower compared to Wargame. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I feel from like just how easy my stuff has been spotted. Like even recon squads, I had a recon squad that got spotted. Like the actual enemy recon squad that spotted it was about 800, 900 meters away, and this is like a little two-man recon squad. And then I just get instantly opened off on by this Bofors, and it was interesting.
I find with also infantry selection, I always try to pick infantry that has a lot of machine guns compared to short range infantry, because I still think machine guns are the most important thing to look for when selecting infantry units in this game still.
I agree with a few exceptions. Like I really like the Stosstruppen. And I think the Stosstruppen are the undoubted best close range infantry once you get within the SMG range.
What makes them good for the close ranges is the smoke grenades allow you to close that distance. Where I find if, let's say, like a Stern Pioneer 6-man flamethrower squad, they're deadly once they get into that 100-meter range. But getting in there past machine gun fire from enemy infantry and sometimes enemy half-tracks without some clever positioning is a real pain in the arse.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I do think has changed since Wargame is that positioning is a lot more important, because in the past, yeah, flanking was great and all, but a lot of fighting took place using sort of like micro moves on like a front line. So you might have like two groups of tanks trying to kill each other, like like one super heavy on one side, one super heavy on the other side. You move forward, fire a shot, reverse, and keep doing this. Maybe try and get it, bait it out as long as you can to get an 80 gem plane in or something. Whereas with Steel Division, you have to think a bit more carefully, I think, about exactly where you position stuff. And the line of sight tool really like leads to that, because you can see exactly where the best spot to put your, AT gun or whatever will be, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think the defensive tools that you have to kill tanks are just a lot more reliable than in Wargame. Because in Wargame, a lot of the vehicle type just consisted of ATGM vehicles and stuff like that, which can easily be outplayed. But AT guns obviously don't have, the flight time and stuff like that. So I think also because of that you just can't, bait out shots and just make them miss while you're retreating to get out of line of sight. Makes positioning also just a lot more important.
And speaking of positioning, I guess the vehicle combat has completely been overchanged to mainly with the whole one-hit kill mechanic system. Instead of having a whole HP bar, your vehicles can all potentially die in one hit, but there's a bit more to that with crit chances and whatnot. Thoughts?
I actually kind of like this one. That might be a bit unpopular because I know a lot of people like the HP system, but I think in terms of realism, it's better, because at the end of the day, why are you going to lose 1 HP for like getting shot and then bouncing the shot? It's not really affecting the tank. And then in terms of actual gameplay, it does feel a little more random. Just because there's a bit more certainty in Wargame where you're like, okay, if you hit, you're going to do this much damage, and you know how much you'll do. Whereas this one, instead of damage, it's pen chance. But I don't think that really takes away from it too much.
Yeah.
And penetration chance is fairly calculated. It's
100 meters per one.
Yeah, 100 meters per AP, and basically the way you work it out is you take your AP off the armor of the target. Oh, sorry, the other way around. No, that's way. Sorry, you take your AP off the armor of the target. And depending on what that is, you have a percentage chance to hit. So, like, if you have the same AP as their armor, you have a 2% chance to penetrate, for example. And every 100 meters they get closer, that chance goes up. I think it goes up from 2 to 8, then 8 to 16, and then 16 to 27. It's a bit weird. I'm not sure why the numbers are the way they are.
I just wish that they wouldn't do this like this, considering that they have percentage chances for penetrating. I wish they didn't have this 100-meter cutoff where it just, the difference between being at 999 or 1001 meter makes then suddenly potential 9% penetration difference. Just feels kind of, I don't know, lazy. I don't know, like in Wargame you got more accuracy for like each 10, 15, 20 meters and not just 175. So considering that you have percentage-based penetration system, I think it would be also better for gameplay if you had this more fluent and not like these arbitrary steps.
So you'd sort of like suggest lowering the steps that it goes up. So instead of every 100 meters, it'd be every, I don't know, 25.
Yeah,
Just a
something
little
like
bit
that.
more.
Like that, like effectively after 100 meters, you have the same penetration as before, but you just had, you know, also that the percentage numbers in between the steps.
So you're saying you still keep it every 100 meters. Yeah, it's 1 AP, but you have the accuracy change like every 25 meters or so.
Not just accuracy, but I think what.
Because if you did it with armor penetration, where you do it like every 25 meters, it'd be a bit ridiculous.
Not every 25 meters AP. What I'm saying is imagine you have at 1000 meters you have a 2% penetration chance,
Okay.
and at 900 meters let's say 9%. Okay, then once you are at that 900 meter range, you suddenly jump from 2 to 9%. What I'm suggesting is that make it a fluent increase of percentage instead of a sudden step forward. So at like 950 meters you are at 5%.
Okay, yeah, I see. I understand. I get that, but it'd be very hard to implement because it's not just that percent chance; it's the armor value and the AP value because it's always jumps by 1.
I mean, of course, it's hard to implement, but
you
know,
I get what you mean because it is a bit arbitrary, of course.
Yeah, it's also kind of weird that I think accuracy is also with these 100-meter cutoffs, if I noticed correctly. Even though it is not in Wargame. In Wargame it was very fluent, but suddenly in Steel Division it isn't anymore. And I think that also has to do with this new accuracy system, which isn't just, 9 equals 90%, but it also has some weird dice roll system, I don't know.
I think there's definitely a dice roll, but I also think it depends on the state of the enemy vehicle. So what I've noticed is if you panic a vehicle and make it retreat, your accuracy against it goes up. And you also gain accuracy every shot, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's also also a nice new addition.
It makes sense because you didn't have rangefinders back, and you just have to keep on guessing until you got it right. But also, I find that critical hits in this are much more fatal or worrying than compared to Wargame Rare. Okay.
I mean,
all apart from one.
Okay,
the only one is bailed out.
Yeah, that one's pretty much a game over. But can you fix a vehicle that's been bailed out, or is it just gone?
Well, no, bailed out only means that the crew has jumped out.
I know, but some of those crits, like tracks broken and whatnot, you can fix with a supply truck.
No, you can't.
You can't repair anything, can you?
I think the only thing that you quote unquote can repair is weapon damage, where you just lose all of your ammunition.
Yeah.
But other than that, you can't repair anything.
I swear you could repair stuff if it took a while, of course. But yeah, it was possible. But
I thought so. I don't know.
VIP beta. I thought back then that I had one occasion where it repaired itself, but other than that, I didn't notice anything.
Yeah, I don't think that's the case. I think it should be, but from experience, that doesn't seem to happen.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I'm wrong, then please correct me because I'd love to be able to repair my stuff, but it doesn't seem to have happened when I've tried it. So
because it would seem very silly if you have a vehicle. Oh no, the track's broken, and there's no way for you to like fix it, or I think it'd be a cool mechanic if, let's say, your tank crew bailed out, and you do like a big push to try to save the tank because it's a very important tank. You smoke it and whatnot. You manage to gain the front line, and then you just use a repair truck to slowly repair it to bring it back. Kind of like how you captured enemy vehicles in Men of War. Or if you could capture enemy vehicles, that'd be stupidly funny.
I'd love to be able to recrew a bail out vehicle, like even if it's an enemy's one, that'd be really cool.
Yeah, I think that's just part of the more realism-trimmed focus that they have compared to Wargame.
Yeah.
Although I think that at least with bailed out, you could make something like you can recapture it with a leader squad maybe or something along those lines. But I can somewhat understand not being able to fix the other crits. Like repairing tracks takes, I don't know, hours, maybe days. I have no idea. And also not being able to repair infantry kind of makes sense. But gameplay-wise, I prefer if you were able to, but of course, it's realism-wise doesn't make any sense.
It's always a balance, really, isn't it, between gameplay and realism? And I think Wargame tended a bit more towards the gameplay than the realism in terms of like stuff like you said, like replacing men. You're not just going to get a supply truck and just have like an near infinite amount of guys that can just run out.
Or you could capture an enemy supply truck and it has your guys' ammunition.
Yeah. And like, it has your guys in it.
I mean,
Apparently.
that's still realistic. That still
That was
works
a
in
good
Steel
bug.
Division. I think they should fix that.
Yeah. I also like to talk about the surrender mechanic a bit, because that's a pretty big deal, being able to beat a unit without having to actually kill it. As some people say, I'd say it's a bit ridiculous right now. We all maybe saw that Reddit post of course, Stug getting 4 Stugs, was it? Razzmann?
4 or 5?
4 Stugs, I think it was.
Yeah, 4 Stugs surrendering to 1 half-track.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to infantry, I don't think it is that important, especially since, I mean, once the infantry squad is pinned down, it is most likely dead anyways. It's certainly an interesting mechanic. I think it should definitely get some adjustments. Like you said, the half-track versus the Stugs is one big thing that is just ridiculous. But with the new pinned down mechanic and the morale mechanic, I don't think it is as necessary, to be honest. I think it would be enough if you made it so infantry can't retreat if it is too close to the enemy. Other than that, I think it's not that good of an addition, maybe.
I find it okay personally. I mean, it's pretty useful. Like, let's say it's an enemy tank you can't kill, but you scare it to shit and back, and then you could capture it by surrounding it essentially. I think that's a good mechanic, but yeah, it does get a bit ridiculous when it comes to like the half tracks or infantry. You know, I want to make a point that I think it's kind of realistic, a bunch of half tracks surrendering to a Stug, and let me explain. Because let's say you're inside your Stug, you're getting pounded to crap and back, there's artillery, and all of a sudden, you know, there's this half-track behind you. You don't know if it's just, if you're inside the tank, you don't know if it's just one half-track or the rest of the American forces, because you may saw, you know, some ridiculous pictures of, you know, 500 Germans being in a prisoner of war line by, like, trove odd British dudes or American dudes. Because that stuff happens a lot once, you know, you got pinned down or beaten up to crap. Large forces would end up surrendering to, you know, a ridiculously smaller force that they could beat.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
from-
especially.
Yeah,
Sorry, go on.
but no, that's pretty much what I was saying. Sorry.
Okay. No, I mean, one historical thing that's quite interesting is towards the end of the war, a lot of the German army was made up of like the old and infirm and the young. And it's quite interesting that a lot of these like surrenders happen. To be honest, it sounds kind of a bit like these people have been forced out of their homes to go to war, and they kind of wanted to go home, which is quite interesting. But as far as the mechanic works, in my opinion, I like it apart from half tracks, because what I've had in the past is where there's a very sad occasion when I played a 1v1. I had a Sherman Firefly, by Berta Firefly, or whatever how it's pronounced.
Beute.
A Beute. Thank you, Razzmann. Or Danke, shall I say? And basically, I missed I missed a Honey Stewart with it 7 times in a row. The Honey Stewart basically panicked my tank, and he chased it down with a half track, and the half track made it surrender. There was literally there were no enemy forces behind, there were no enemy forces in front, apart from one half track, and that made my tank surrender. And I think that's the only issue, is that like because I've seen when people have stunned tanks with bombers or planes and then surrendered it with one half track, and I feel like that isn't quite great.
It's kind of like, it feels kind of the same of, you know, bum rushing a bunch of M1 and 3s down the road to spot enemy units. It just feels you can't stop it. It's just going to run up to you and stab you. It's like Commando Pro in Modern Warfare.
Like Commando Pro Modern Warfare. That's a good analogy.
It is essentially Commando Pro from Modern Warfare 2, holy crap.
That's a specialist training that all the half-track drivers go through, by the way, in case anyone was wondering.
Knife only.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also just want to briefly talk about the leader mechanic, because we haven't touched on that. I love it. I love the idea of having a leader unit that's not good for combat most of the time, unless it's a tank, that you keep around to make your units better, and having, you know, you want to be able to knock out their force quickly, try to knock out the leader first.
Yeah, I do like it, personally. I think it's a nice addition, but I mean, not really much more than that. It's
Yeah.
It's a good way of replacing CVs.
Well, no, I don't think it really does. I think the difference is it's basically like having higher veteran units. Like,
yeah, it gives your units one more
Yeah.
star effectively.
It's basically like in Wargame, if you you basically chose to take your guys in elite instead of whatever.
I mean,
It's just pretty
I
simple.
think the stars definitely have more impact than veterans in Wargame. I think they like raise pretty much everything from rate of fire to morale to accuracy, whereas rate of fire was never affected in Wargame. So that is quite a big deal. But I'm like personally, I'm like kind of indifferent about it. I'm like, I don't think that it's like bad per se, but I think the game would be about just as good without it. So yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And one last game mechanic I want to talk about is the plane and anti-aircraft interaction, because we no longer have crazy ATGM planes and we no longer have Tunguska M's. Instead, we got a bunch
Typhoon
of
spam.
you got Typhoon spams and a bunch of crazy, flak 88s. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is, do you like the plane to AA interaction? Because it's very weird now compared to Wargame.
Yeah, AA is definitely not as deadly as it is in Wargame, which makes sense. It's only World War II. But no, I do think there's a fine line, I think, between AA being overpowered and shooting everything down, and it not like scratching the planes at all. And I'm not quite sure if it's there right yet. I've had games where planes have completely dominated everything, and then I've had the opposite where they haven't been able to survive 5 seconds in the air.
Yeah.
Maybe both times you were playing allies, your own planes were dominating, and the enemy planes wouldn't be able to do something because you had just had tripostons everywhere.
They need to fix tripostons a bit, I think.
Whoa. Take that back.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Just a tad,
You're a national pride rank.
National pride, you go down to Buckingham Palace and there's a bunch of tripostons on top of the roof. You're still using today to stop any terrorist attacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
I mean,
I get what they're going for, making it so AA doesn't kill but stun up and try to stop bombers, so I don't really think it happens. And you have to have planes to effectively kill other enemy airplanes. But I don't think, like Mbetts said, it's not quite yet. Because I still had times where I had, I think, a respectable anti-aircraft force of M15s and Bofors guns. And, bloody planes keep coming in. They'd bomb, they'd get immediately stunned up and then evac, but I didn't have enough time to kill them unless I had my own planes.
I think the problem here is just that so far, from what I can tell, is that allied planes are just so much better. Not only do they generally have more and or better ASFs than some or if not all German divisions, but also they tend to have very good multi-roles. The Spitfires, for example, or the Lightnings they double as ASF and anti-ground planes or bombers, whereas mostly Germans don't have that. And on top of that, they also tend to have less and also worse ASFs. And I think it would be kind of interesting if like allies had the better planes, but Germans had maybe AA that would actually be somewhat able to kill planes, not very reliable, but
well, they do have the flak 88s.
Allies, yeah, 88s also don't kill planes, which is
They only stun.
Yeah,
they're very good at stunning. But
they're very good. They're very good at stunning before the bomber usually reaches you, but that's really it.
I think it also depends on the veterancy, though.
Mm-hmm.
The enemy plane.
Yesterday, me and Valh were playing 4v4 versus Urang and
that was
a few
fun.
others. That was a very interesting game, and at one point we had 6 flak 88s all in like a quarter of the map. And I mean, for the first time ever I saw one of my flak 88s actually shoot down a plane, but that's after it took about 20 shots from the rest of them, and all the other AA we had. So it definitely can kill planes, but I think it takes more than the usual 2 or 3 shots that it shoots out before planes usually evac.
Yeah, I think planes still have some sort of hidden HP mechanic.
Because
they definitely do.
You can only kill a plane after it's been like fully moraled, I think.
Yeah, because it also has to repair, right?
Yeah.
But there has to be some sort of HP system.
Yeah, planes is just I think it's still in a rather wonky state, and I just need to be treated a little bit, because Especially in a 1v1, I don't find AA all that important. It's much better just to buy a plane to chase down enemy planes, because you can't get full map coverage on a 1v1 with AA.
I mean, unless you play Scots and you have tripods, and it also just double as ground support.
I do like that a lot too.
And one thing I really like is the French deck has, like, you know, they basically have a lot of mobile AA, and they've got those like Bofors trucks in A phase, which are really good.
And they're good for, like, as you said, infantry sport, because it's a bloody autocannon. And they have good range as well, compared to, like, Wargame, where the ground range is significantly nerfed compared to the airplane range.
It is indeed.
Yeah. But I think that pretty much sums up everything mechanically wise, but I do want to talk about the new division system, because how decks are made in this are completely bloody different from Wargame. It's much more focused, I'd say. So I want to talk about the phase system first, A, B, and C, how you slowly unlock new units as the match progresses on. Thoughts?
Well,
you go first.
I think it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, like, also thinking about if you just implemented this in Wargame. On the one hand, it gives units that would otherwise not play a much more important role. If you implemented that in Wargame, you would see a lot more T-55s, MX-30s, and so on. On the other hand, however, it really lowers the amount of viable decks, because we have to have something for phase A and tanks and infantry, yada yada yada, for phase B and phase C. And on top of, you know, having a low amount of different units in general per division, it just makes deck building a lot less fun and also a lot less varying than it is in Wargame.
Yeah, I mean, because you've got a lot less choice, you've got a lot less sort of variation per deck. But
what?
Yeah, I agree with the rest of your points about the having to have something in phase A, phase B, and phase C. And the is it the Panzer division? They've showed it off on stream, but it's got
Panzer?
the Panzer.
No, the new one.
Oh, they showed it
the,
on the stream?
The one that isn't in that, with the one that will have the other King Tiger variant.
Yeah.
That one will have no
crap,
phase
I didn't
A
see
tank.
that.
Yeah, that division has, I believe, no tanks in phase A.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm worried that how it's even gonna like work in phase A.
I mean,
Because
if they... Yeah, sorry, go on.
I was gonna say, even if it comes up against a you know, like the Scots with a Honey Stewart or, you know, anything similar, unless it's got a well-positioned AT gun, it's gonna find it very difficult to take it out.
I feel like it's going to be one of those decks that's going to work very well in team games, because your team can cover for you A phase. And I think that is a big thing. I think if we start getting into like the 1v1, I don't want to say meta yet, because obviously not. It's a beta. Like how it's released, stuff will get changed, blah blah blah. But I personally think that strong phase A decks are by far the best ones to use in 1v1s. Like, in my opinion, the French deck right now is probably the best one.
Yeah.
Probably both in team games and in 1v1s, but like the sheer power you get in A phase is ludicrous compared to basically everyone else, with a few exceptions. And like, it is just really hard to deal with that. And if you're playing like the 21st Panzer and your only real strong stuff is in the C phase, when you get your
Königstiger.
Königstiger, you know, you're going to suffer, and the amount of ground you lose on the map, sometimes you can't. Because remember, like I was saying earlier about how difficult it is to move around the map with all these choke points. If the enemy gets the area there and they put anti-tank infantry in those areas, your King Tiger doesn't mean anything because it can't move around freely. It's also slow as balls, which is another thing entirely.
I find also another problem with the whole like A phase decks being strong is because it's hard to regain the points to win the match later on. Like, if you get the good first 15 minutes of +2 map control, it's really hard to push back first off and then have enough points within the 40-minute time limit to really win the match. Because that's what those phase A decks are banking on. You know, just rushing hard, getting a +2, lots of map control in the A phase, and then just defending what you got, because defending is much easier in attacking. But with the phase C decks, you know, you have to be more defensive, or you should try to play more defensive during the A and B phase. But the problem with that, is that once you get to C phase, you don't really have enough time or enough firepower to bank up quickly to do a big counterpush, because they've already probably dug in. And even with subpar units, you can still do a very good dug-in defense.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I do like the phase system. I mean, as Razzmann said earlier about the fact it allows sort of weaker units to be used.
I think that's super important.
I think that if Steel Division went for a wargame model where you could buy anything up at any time, tanks like the Honey Stewart and the Command M3A3 or whatever, they would never get used over favor of, again, what Wargame tended to, which was a super heavy meta, which is you bring out one big heavy tank at the start and you babysit it.
I disagree, actually, to be honest, and the reason I disagree is because with half-tracks being so strong and infantry not being able to kill them without getting close, I think those low-point tanks are actually quite valuable.
And also because even if they, like in Wargame, where you have like Leopard 1 against a T90 or something, where you just literally can't do anything, in C Division you can at least still panic. So this the enemy tank, so they still have some sort of role. Of course, in a 1v1 they stand no chance, but if you have like a cheap tank backing up your more expensive tank, then you can sort of out-panic the enemy before it can panic your tank.
And also, I find it much easier to get flanking positions in this compared to Wargame. If good spots to hide a tank behind a building or something, and then move it out when it's in a good position to maybe get a side shot or penetration shot from the front. So I find light tanks to be pretty useful, actually scale well into the later phases when there's more heavier armor on the field, because they're damn good fire support.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair to say. Again, it is all about positioning. Like, one thing that you'll hear a lot of people say on the forums or on Reddit or whatever is they'll be complaining about, oh, the King Tiger's too strong, or the BAF Panther's really strong. Like, how do I deal with these? Yeah, you've got to remember that the thing that the Germans have is they have a few very high point, very strong units. But you have to think, like with the King Tiger, right? The King Tiger takes 3 minutes of time to get that many points. If you go into a game against the 21st Panzer Division and by C phase you're not winning, then you're losing, basically. And you just have to play more carefully because you have a lot of cheaper units, a lot of cheaper tanks that if you play with them right, can kill these King Tigers for days, basically. Like, you can smoke it and charge it, you can stun it with rockets and charge it and try and get a side shot, all these kind of things.
Boil it, mass it, put it in a stew.
Put it right in a stew. And if you follow the recipe Rang, then you can kill things like King Tigers quite easily.
Is King Tiger stew's really tasting good, Val?
Very German.
A bit of salt in there, some supply trucks, sprinkle in the Messerschmitts, and okay, I'm just let it boil, 20 minutes, and be good to go.
God, Ramsey would be proud, Rang.
Oh yeah, it's gonna taste like crop steel and Aryan race tears or some nonsense like that.
When did this turn into cooking?
Yeah, that's another idea actually. But yeah, the phase system it's interesting. I like how it makes stuff useful when it wouldn't be useful otherwise. Like there was a whole Wargame comparison. But I also want to talk about the deck building, because deck building is completely different now. How you can't do mechanized or real category decks. As you said, it's very limited. I personally think that's a good thing from a gameplay standpoint. It's less fun with messing around compared to like a USSR deck. Do you want to do an airborne USSR deck? Do you want to do a tank-based USSR deck? You've got so many AA choices that you can really mix and match what you want for your playstyle. But I think from a balance decision and how divisions are very focused in certain aspects, I like it a lot because it makes for very interesting gameplay. Where you watch a Luftlander dude fight a French dude, it's completely different deck styles and tactics working against each other.
To be fair, Rank, I think you're looking at it the wrong way. I think the comparison to make would be Germany is still imagine if Germany in Wargame had like 3 times the units it has, right?
Okay.
And then each of these decks is like a specialization. Like the 12th SS Panzer Division is like taking an armored German deck, for example. Because a lot of these units share things between them, but you can only get them in these certain divisions. Now, there is no general deck. There is no amalgamation of all the German units, but each one of these is like a specialization.
Okay, yeah, I
Which
see.
I do think, again, you know, there is a lot less stuff in total than Wargame, but you know, I think that's just a product of the times and the amount of people that were fighting, really.
And a lot of the stuff in Wargame was, you know, how many M113s with a 50 cal has a different name, or a machine gun, or a minigun, or an autocannon.
Many M113s.
Personally, and I'm getting like for my opinion on this and some other things, some hate here and there, and it's a bit extreme. But personally, I think it might as well not exist. Honestly, more of an illusion that you're actually building a deck because you actually don't have a lot of choice. For one, because there's not a lot of variety of units, and the other big reason obviously being the phase system. So the variance between the decks, the variety between decks of different people that play the same division will be very low. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
I understand that because, like, let's say you're picking tanks for A phase. You're not going to have, like, 3 cards of tanks for A phase. You probably just have enough to get you through A phase because you're not going to spend that many points on bloody tanks in A phase. Right, what am I trying to say? But anyway, from, like, balance rise, I think that's good. And I do understand the point how, you know, it is kind of an illusion of choice because there's always units that you're gonna pick, and there's only a few variations of what you're gonna pick. Because AA, you only get like 2 or 3 different units per deck. It's just about when you want to bring them up or how many you want to bring up.
Yeah, and that is a big illusion, and it really is. Because like I'm just looking at the 2nd Infantry Division, by the way, just at this point. Right, so you've got, if you include the M4A1 DDs, which is just the Shermans or amphibious, right?
Yep.
Those and the M4A1 Shermans, that's 1 unit. Then you have the Command Shermans and the Rhinos. That's 3 different units of tanks.
Yep.
You only have 3 tanks in the tank tab. It's just when you get them, you get more or less of them.
Yeah. I say it's a bit harsh because that's not a tank division. If you were to look at like the infantry section of that, you can make much more fluid choices. Do you want a lot of rifles, or do you want to have a few rifles and a lot of ranger squads, or do you want to have, you know, a fair mix of rifles, maybe ranger machine gun, ranger support, and then a lot of command units? I think.
I mean, there's only 6 infantry.
But that doesn't change the general playstyle of your deck. It will most likely still effectively play just like before.
Well,
I mean, yeah,
you
may focus your deck more around MG squads, more around 10-man squads, but effectively, also just due to the amount of activation points and unit slots you have, you can just fill your deck so much. Like you have barely any left spots in many decks when you compare it, for example, to Wargame.
Like it is more tighter, but I'm gonna say this. I think general decks in Wargame are horrible. I did not like them at all, because
I mean, yeah, but I mean, even if you look at specialized deck in Wargame, even if you looked at USSR Airborne, if you looked at West Germany Armored or Mech, you still had more choice for various reasons. For example, that you had a lot more transport options. I mean,
that's because of the time.
Yeah, of course. I mean, in some aspects, it obviously comes down to the scenario. That just you know, in World War II, you had no ATGMs, you had no surface-to-air missiles, stuff like that. And I'm not denying that. I'm aware of that it's due to the scenario, but it doesn't make the point untrue.
I think I agree with you. Yeah.
One thing I did not like about general decks is that, really, in the end of the day, playing a Eurocore deck and a Scandi deck, you're still going to bring the same type of units, it's just slightly different. You're still going to have as many super heavy
different transports.
But they came in different transports. But okay, you got like a fast 10-point VAB, and then you got the fast 10-point XA.
You had the CB90.
Yeah, you had those differences, but you're still going to bring mortars in both divisions, in both
just
decks.
like you are in Steel Division.
But you're only gonna bring like the cheap 30-point mortars. You're still gonna bring the big heavy tanks, as both of those decks both have big heavy tanks. You're still gonna bring long-range radar.
Are different.
AA, but they're only slightly different. They still perform the same job. An STRV, okay, that's literally the same thing. An STRV 105 compared to a Leopard 284, 285 is very much the same because it's the same bloody tank. But
no, the 1-to-1 is actually unique because it has 23 AP. No other Leopard 2 has 23 AP, with the exception of the 285.
But that's the same minor differences as bringing up, you know, a bunch of rifles compared to bringing up some machine gun, like Ranger machine gun squads. What I'm trying to say is that you always bought the same type of units in all the good Wargame decks. You always bought an ATGM plane, a like 150 odd point, 2 card, like 2 plane per card interceptor, some sort of cheap bomber. You didn't really bring up many helicopters.
Isn't that the same in Steel Division?
Yes,
actually, I would say that in Steel Division it's even more the case. You have, like, how many different tanks do you have across the Allied divisions? You have Jumbos, you have Stuarts.
But they all come up in different tabs, or, you know,
I mean,
the 2nd Infantry Division only has Shermans. The 3rd Armoured has, you know, more advanced Shermans and whatnot. But you'll bring in a different amount of them compared to each division. Where Wargame, you're usually just going to play either a general or mechanized deck. You're always going to have just 5 tabs, you know, 5 slots for infantry, 5 slots for tanks, and you're always going to get like roughly
that's why you
the
can
same
choose
role.
specializations.
You haven't seen my Australian motorized deck yet, Rang, obviously.
But I would argue that a lot of specializations in Wargame weren't worthwhile. Only mechanized and armored and motorized are really good.
Sorry, but I hear a lot that there are a good amount of units that are worthless in Wargames. There are a good amount of specializations or decks that are trash in Wargame. But even if you take those away, let's say that is 50% of the choices and units, okay? Even if you take those away, you still have a lot more variety than you have in Steel Division. If you only include the semi-viable or viable units and decks, you still have a lot more variety. And even if you look at tanks, like all the Jumbos, if you go down to the simple, like the detailed stats, the Jumbos, they all have 6 rounds per minute. Like you have in Wargame, you have 7, 8, 9, 12 rounds per minute tanks. You have 8 HGMs on tanks. You have auto-loaders. You have non-auto-loaders. You have 4HE versus 3HE and all that stuff. You don't have that big of a variety in Steel Division. Again, partially due to realism. I understand that, but
I think from a gameplay standpoint, I think the less variety for forcing you to play a specialization deck, because I always disliked how Blue 4 Mechanized, or, you know, right now Yugoslavia, or Commonwealth general decks that could, because all those decks in Wargame, all the good ones, meta, could perform every single role effectively within that deck, except for helicopters, because helicopters aren't
I can understand where you're coming from. Yeah.
And I like forcing a player to be good in one aspect and bad in another, even if that destroys the variety you have.
Yeah.
I just think from a gameplay standpoint.
Like in Steel Division, you have actual holes, whereas in Wargame,
you did not have a hole.
Certain decks just, and for the most part, I mean, there were some exceptions for like decks that were trash at infantry grinding would still be played, but for the most part, usually decks that were played in a somewhat competitive scene, where you could usually perform everything, but just some less than others, but effectively they could do most of the stuff.
Okay.
I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah, that is my point, and that's how I just wanted to discuss.
Personally, there's one big issue with decks in Steel Division.
Okay. What is it?
There's no more tactical projection of rotary air power, Rang.
I know there's no Lynx A87s or Super Pumas anymore.
Super Pumas? What heli rushes were you doing there?
Hey, have you seen the French helicopter rush where you use Super Pumas?
Oh, I think you're thinking Cassiopes.
And Tigra. Yeah, because I seen a dude do that really well. Was it the Puma or was it the goddamn
Puma Cassiope?
That'll be the Cassiope
with the autocannon.
No, it's the French helicopter rockets, the Snap rockets. It does the exact same thing as the Panther.
The Panther, yeah.
It does the exact same thing as the Lynx AH7.
No, it is medium sized instead of small sized.
Oh no!
And literally, literally unplayable, by the way.
I mean, I think it would actually makes a decent amount of difference whether they're small or medium. If you look at how many you would see, but
it's still good for. But yeah. But that's really, like, I think that's most of the stuff to do with deck building in Steel Division, unless anyone else wants to add anything else.
Yeah, I think that's pretty substantial, really. I think if we're going to summarize, it would just be, it's a lot different. You can argue whether it's simpler or streamlined, or sorry,
Yeah.
Whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. I personally don't
Okay.
mind it. I think it's very different,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that's.
Yeah,
quite a
I mean,
bit
I
of
haven't been
discussion.
able to get my true word in, which is
Between-
Me and Raz was
But-
having a
but
little
no,
civil
to
war,
be
yeah,
honest,
I will admit.
my views have been said, bit by both Valh and Razzmann. I'm sort of in the middle as to.
A true neutral. So, just a final summary thoughts. Do you like the game?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd say I will.
Yeah, I think generally it's an improvement over Wargame with the new mechanics and the
That's where I
quality of life
disagree, but
stuff.
whatever.
No, I will say, I think I prefer the gameplay of Wargame, but I love the little quality of life things this game has. It is like Bets was saying earlier, like that line of sight tool and those pre-deployment things. I keep pressing C in Wargame. I keep like trying to gather my units and move them, and they all just get like put in one straight line because that's what happens when you grab your units, like loads of them, and then redeploy them. Basically, like it's I
Yeah,
miss
like-
it.
Personally, the only thing for me personally again, I think that the only things or 90% of the things that does better than Wargame are the quality of life issues. The rest are pretty much steps backwards in many ways.
It does though make it more accessible to the
Yeah.
sort of the less hardcore RTS fans.
And that's
I know.
bring me to my second question. Do you think it's dumbed down?
Yes.
Yeah, I do think it is,
Yeah.
but I think in some aspects that can be good, especially if you want to appeal to a wider audience. And, like a lot of my friends, like, sort of picked up Wargame, tried it for a game, and were like massively overwhelmed by everything. Even though they only touched on a small section, it wasn't like Command and Conquer or Halo Wars, back in the day where it's simple rock paper scissors, and it was just too much for them. And I think that even though Steel Division isn't as dumbed down as some of those games, and probably someone would disagree with me,
I mean,
I do think it'll appeal to those sort of people a lot better who are looking for an RTS game, but a more updated and newer version.
yeah, I think we have to say that it's dumbed down compared to Wargame, but it's still more. It's not compared to the majority of other strategy games. It's still more complex than most of those out there. I think we should stress it out, maybe. Yeah, and
I
also
agree.
the fact that you just have to control generally a lot less units in Wargame also makes it more accessible. And I think that over the course of the game's life cycle, I think we will see less hardcore players or hardcore fans than in Wargame, but more casual players and especially more people from Steam sales will stick than compared to Wargame, I think.
And I think that's good for the player base and whole, because it's very hard to get a new person into Wargame, because, hey, do you know about ATGMs and seed charges? Oh boy, let's explain this. Because a lot of the stuff in Wargame, like, I never really knew in Wargame until a bit later on, yeah, tanks gain more AP the closer it got.
I mean, to be fair, Rang, it's not like there's a good tutorial. Like the Wargame tutorial is terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's so many mechanics in Wargame that are rather hard to get into, like the seed. Like, seed and having to, like, turn off and micro your radar, AA, and how infantry, and, like, the really nitty-gritty with carbines versus assault rifles and SMGs.
At the end of the day, I think you can boil this down to two factors. One of which is the time period, because at the end of the day, things were a lot simpler back in World War II compared to modern warfare. And again, this isn't necessarily a good or a bad thing, it's just different. And I think the other one is that, like Razzmann mentioned before, because you tend to have nowhere near as many units under your control, from my experience at least, unless you're spamming Ersatz-Struppen across the map, you don't have anywhere near as many units as you do in Wargame.
I think even if you would do that, you still would have less than two.
Yeah,
I mean, they cost basically the
you
same
get 3
as
cards, can't you?
What, 3 cards?
Yeah,
You get 3 cards at the end of
I mean, but
24.
you could do more in Wargame though. Let's put it that way.
In Wargame, you have like all the transports too, because here transports disappear, and it's less of an information overload. And I think having less units is also, I think that's a good thing, because there's a lot less you just have to manage, easier for new people to get in, and you don't think, okay, what do I do with my transports now? Oh, just bum rush them in, just let them have a good old jolly time getting blown up and racing the enemy's ammunition.
The inclusion of mods, I think, is going to be interesting. I'm not 100% sure on what we can do with mods, but I definitely think that it will, to some extent, extend sort of the lifetime of this game.
Sadly, no map editor though.
Not yet. I don't
No
know.
I said out of Shogun 2, and now look at it.
But as far as I know, you can do a lot more than you could in Wargame, and of course, I think especially the in-game support, you can turn them off in-game and just download them via Steam Workshop, will also make them a lot more attractive.
Yeah, I'm just expecting them to release like Wargame full conversion mods.
I'd love it, but I don't think. I mean, also just because of how maps are, it's unfortunately won't quite happen.
It won't. I mean, one big thing is that I hope, at least in terms of modding resources, is, as myself and Mbetts discovered, what was it? Do you remember when that you as well, Razzmann? Remember when that armor on the M113 was changed, and it changed the armor of every single
yes,
one Chinese spag as well. It was really weird.
To put some context, when we were working on the Faustmann balance mod for Wargame Dragon, Valh and Mbetts also did some part of that, and some of the units that are just so weirdly connected to each other. It's really spaghetti code. Like you change the value of a 5-point transport, and suddenly a spec unit of 70 points suddenly has more or less front armor than before, because for whatever reason, two units that are completely indifferent from each other, from two different nations, are tied to each other, which is just huge.
Remember the Strellas? Was it the Strellas or the Iglas? I can't remember what it was. No, Sidewinders. It was Sidewinders, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Or suddenly all the ATGMs were swapped out with Sidewinders and stuff like that on the model. Weird.
That was weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm pretty hopeful for the game. Do you guys hope that they add or change anything in the future?
Yeah, go first, Razzmann.
I hope they add Wargame 4.
Well, we saw it in the active aggression, little billboard thing, so...
Well, they confirmed that this was just part of the European escalation trailer, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean...
Isn't it like some legal problems because it's owned by Focus and not Eugene?
That's what I heard. I'm not sure how true that is, though, because I heard that through the grapevine, not, from someone directly.
Yeah, from what I know, Focus owns the IP. But I mean, it doesn't stop them from effectively making them Wargame 4, but just calling it differently. Or maybe Paradox will buy the IP, or maybe they just work with Focus on Wargame 4 again. I don't know.
Yeah. Game of Raw number 4.
At least it rhymes.
It does rhyme very well. Yeah, I mean, one thing that I'm really excited for, and this is one thing that I felt with Wargame, was that I really loved the game, and I still do, and I'm sure all of you agree, because you've all spent ludicrous hours in it just like I have. And it was really sad to see the player base just going down, and we had a few spikes when the DLCs came out, but it never really reached what it was. And again, I think it's because the game was a learning cliff, and you just jumped off it. If you were lucky, you didn't have a noose attached to your neck when you did. And that was basically Wargame, and it takes a long time to sort of get good, as it were.
And also the lobby system.
Yeah, well, that's I'll say that in a minute, but just before we go into that, I do think that having a bit more of a casual appeal, and also I think that World War II is a much more widely enjoyed genre. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the Cold War setting for Wargame. It's the reason that I enjoyed it so much. But I think there's more people who are kind of like the Men of War players of this world, the co-players of this world, who might be more interested in World War II.
The Variaboos.
The Variaboos, yeah. Krupp Steel and all that.
Oh boy, yeah.
And, don't go on forms, don't go on forms.
And so basically, I think that this game is going to get, like you said, a more casual player base, but also hopefully a bigger... yeah, hopefully a bigger player base, and Paradox has done a good job with all the advertisement and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I'm hoping personally it gets not like an esports scene, but a bit more of a little bit of a competitive scene, because I'm finding from casting and watching replays, it's much more fun watching replays than this compared to Wargame, because you do have that progression of units, and it's much easier to see what's going on because you don't have a lot of rubbish on the screen. Everything has a defined role. It's no like transport or other real nonsense. It's much easier to follow a match.
Yeah, yeah, that's certainly true.
It does feel like it has that flow, and there's more things to talk about. And also the Road War 2 set, and I love it. I really enjoy it. There's a lot of cool potential in it, even though there's less units, which does also make me sad. I want... How many units does Wargame have now? Like 1,500 or something?
About 2K.
About 2,000, although remember,
units, yeah.
a lot of them are also the same units.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
that's a lot.
Same goes for Sea Division 2.
Yeah.
There are also a ton of shared units.
I think there's definitely more in Wargame, but
Yeah.
again, it's. I think that's just a product of the setting, really, rather than anything else. Really.
Of course, yeah. And I think that pretty much covers anything up, unless you guys want to have one last closing remark or statement. Any...
I think the one thing that we have on the agenda is what do you hope to see? Did we say that?
Yeah, I guess we can just quickly do that. Hope they go more into the future a little bit with maybe an expansion pack, because with the whole Normandy setting is very limiting, because we don't see some of the more cooler units such as Comets or Messerschmitt 262s or some other stuff, because it's not within. Like, we don't even have bloody Hellcats in this game because they weren't effectively attached to any of the divisions. So there's a few debates that the 2nd Infantry Division had Hellcats attached, but I don't know.
I mean, I think the name of the game Steel Division Normandy 44 sort of sets it up for sort of sequels to be elsewhere. Maybe in Italy or on the Eastern Front.
I think the one that I would love to see is North Africa, because that doesn't get covered very often. It's a really cool battlefield in World War II.
Yeah, and Eugen generally tends to do stuff that generally aren't covered that often. Like just going Cold War with a strategy game, which isn't covered that often, putting in Yugoslavia, China, and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went for North Africa with the next game or one of the next games. Like it's similarly with the DLCs, where with the first Wargame DLC, the paid DLC that is, they went for one that was fairly easy to produce because they didn't have to do a lot of new models just to see how it goes, and then they saw it sells well, so they do the more extensive ones. And I kind of think that with Normandy 44, they first wanted to test the waters where players just like the general gameplay and went for a scenario that they know of, where they have a lot of knowledge before they get into they spend a lot of money on a different one where they have to research a lot more and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But what I personally would like to see is an Iron Sky DLC where the Germans get reinforcements from the dark side of the moon. That would be interesting.
Playing Nirvana in the background.
I mean, let's be honest, the Germans, obviously, Krupp Steel is well capable of making moon bases. That's not beer on the bush there.
The Koenigsegg should have like 25 frontal armor, what we're talking about.
Oh, at least, yeah. 100%.
No, the engine's in the back. It's just 25 rear armor.
Oh, yeah. Zing!
Good old Wargame memes. I hope they never go away.
Oh, they're gonna come back in full force, and it's gonna be very memes. There's like Krupp Steel and... I mean, we're all seeing the kill list, the French kill list. That's how you do a kill list, yeah, with the memes.
Oh god, well I mean, I don't know, there's getting to be a lot of them. I mean, we had the same problem in the Wargame subreddit, didn't we, where there was like 10 million of them, and then it generally calmed down a bit, but there's been a lot of kill lists. So,
I mean, kill lists are cool. Let's be honest.
Some of them are
like
rubbish.
just with nearly everything, once you see it like everywhere, it obviously gets boring. But you know, it's a cool thing that Eugen did there.
Yeah, especially now how it shows a history of units that are like engaged each other. That's really good seeing how your stuff got blown up. It's a useful tool.
You're talking from experience.
Hey, yeah. match of Oyo's goddamn loft land airplanes. Let's
The,
not talk about it.
the very fact that we actually ended that with slightly more points, I'm amazed. That was
Yeah.
perhaps the best comeback I've had so far in Steel Division, where we were like, but for reference, by the way, guys, it was Captains Rang and two of the guys against, it was me, you, Mbetts, was it Vulcan as well, Lewis?
And Cybin.
Oh, yeah, Cybin, yeah.
Yeah.
And the start of the game went terribly, right?
For you.
Me and Lewis, we lost the town, or it was on Colombe, the however that's pronounced, the train yard map. We lost the train yard side. We didn't advance in mid. We lost the right hand side, and then, as if like by magic, on high, the French tank. Oh no, sorry, no, we weren't even the French. You had loads of French tank destroyers. We had like a few of those Marder 3s came out. Marder 2s even. They turned the tide. And then the line of 6 Flak 88s just walking, attack moving across the entire map was just amazing.
And they didn't have enough artillery to knock out the Flak 88, so they just kept... And all the airplanes as well.
I mean, there was one point when your team put down 3 separate off-map artilleries on our 88s at the same time.
Yep. I know Captain was swearing at that point. He was getting really pissed off with all the off-maps. Not all
good
the
old
off-maps.
Captains.
Yeah. Yeah.
Give him his dance hat back on the Discord.
Wait, why was that taken away?
That's a good question. But yeah, that pretty much covers everything. I mean, there's still quite a bit to go of Steel Division. There's still only in beta. We still haven't seen half of the other... Well, we haven't played with the other half of Divisions, and there's like another 10 odd maps, I think, that's meant to be added. And a campaign, and hopefully a tutorial. So yeah, I'm very hopeful for the game. I really do wish it the best. And I enjoy it. I love it.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
So don't I really?
And yeah, essentially ends things off for today. Thank you very much for tuning in, and thank you for joining me, guys. I appreciate your input.
Not a problem.
So I've been RANGROO.
I've been Valh.
And I've been the Nazi. And Mbetts is not here.
Is Mbetts AFK?
And that was a perfect time for my mic to cut out.
We could have had a smooth outro, but you just had to ruin it. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. As usual, please just take it easy. Bye-bye.